Hello everyone, my name is Tanya. Welcome to my project for EDU 302, Understanding Diversity. A little bit about my cultural biography. I am white, Caucasian, I'm a female, heterosexual, 38 years old, which makes me a millennial. I was born in Texas, and I live only 30 minutes from where I was born and raised. My future career is to be a math and science teacher for grades 4 through 8 here in Texas. In my project proposal, I wanted to focus on race, specifically the African American and Hispanic races, as these are the two most common in the area, which I will be teaching in the future. These two populations are growing in my area, and I wanted to learn more about how race and disability in different cultures intersect, as well as how they are viewed in the educational setting. I included a definition of each area in which I will be highlighting in my presentation, as well as a few resources from my research that I found interesting that I included in my resource list in Module 3. In the intersectionality video on YouTube, it explains what intersectionality is and how people from different backgrounds experience the world differently and the different parts that intersect and define us. The website that I included under the disability definition by the CDC explains disability and how it could affect a person, and some limitations that are either restricted or limited, giving us a better understanding of the term disability. I believe that understanding the background of the African American and Hispanic races and the disabilities that are common within each race will help prepare me as a future educator and the diversity within a classroom. Barriers to educational equity include lack of access to high-quality early childhood education. It is estimated that 93 to 150 million children experience some form of disability. These children are 10 times less likely to go to school than other children, and when they do attend school, it is likely to be in a segregated setting. Children with disabilities are more likely to drop out and leave school early without transitioning to secondary school or beyond. Children with disabilities are also at increased risk of school violence and bullying, preventing the safe enjoyment of their right to education. People with disabilities can also experience intersectional discrimination based on their disability and other grounds, including gender, religion, legal status, ethnic origin, age, sexual orientation, or language. There are 13 disabilities recognized in the special education. The most common category is the specific learning disability, and this category includes dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, which make up about 35% of all students who have an IEP. The second most common category is called speech or language impairment, which makes up about 18%. This includes lisping or stuttering or language disorders that make it difficult for students to express themselves or understand words. The third most common category is OHI, also known as other health impairments, including ADHD. This category limits a child's strength, energy, or alertness, such as ADD, Tourette's, epilepsy, anemia, and sickle cell. My first resource is titled Students with Disabilities. It is by the National Center for Education Statistics. It is an informational statistical article, and it presents intersectionality, highlighting race and disability within the education system. The National Center for Education Statistics is a website that created this article on students with disabilities based on racial and ethnic groups in education to present statistics of children based by the IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. It presents data obtained from the school year of 2015-2016 of students served under IDEA and in the special education program. It highlights each race and disabilities within each race from students in different age groups ranging from 3 to 21 years of age. The charts help explain and visualize the students in each race that are serviced in the educational setting, as well as categorizing the disabilities serviced in each race. The IDEA provides resources for students with disabilities, as well as laws and rights provided for the students to improve their educational outcomes. If I wanted to share my findings with my future colleagues on this intersectionality of race and disability, and the percentages of children served under the IDEA, then this resource would help me in presenting factual information categorized by each race and disability. This is a couple of charts taken from resource. Number one, the first chart shows a percentage of the 3 to 21-year-olds in the school year 2015-2016 that were served under the IDEA based on race and ethnicity. The second chart shows the percentage of 3 to 21-year-olds categorized by disability and race. And the disability mostly noted in this category is dyslexia. Students with autism made up about 12% of the nation's school children with disabilities. Students with disabilities may require services to provide them access to the same learning opportunities as students without disabilities. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, supports states and localities in their efforts to aid children and youth with disabilities meeting their individual needs and improving their educational outcomes. This resource examines the percentage of students served by IDEA and the percentage distribution of children and youth receiving services for specific disabilities. Public K-12 schools in the United States educate about 7.3 million students with disabilities, a number that has grown over the last few decades. New York serves the largest share of disabled students in the country at about 20.5% of its overall public school enrollment, with Pennsylvania, Maine, and Massachusetts following as the next largest shares. The states serving the lowest shares of disabled students include Texas and Idaho, just at a little over 11%. The second resource I chose was titled Financial Inequality, Disability, Race, and Poverty in America, an article by the National Disability Institute. This resource addresses topics based on race, disabilities, and gender. In this resource by the National Disability Institute, it highlights inequalities based on race and disability in the world. It talks about how African Americans are disparate even more so when you have qualities as a woman, you are African American, and you have a disability, all characteristics that hinder any advancements in life. In the different sections of this article, it wants to raise awareness to the readers of ways that intersection of race and disability can affect a person. Reading through this article, the first thing I thought of was the audience it is trying to reach and the message it was trying to send. The article is very informational about the different categories in which an African American person is judged based on their race, disability, and socioeconomic status. What I liked best about this article is how it broke down each category and explained in depth ways that African Americans face barriers in their everyday lives and how it becomes complicated the more challenges they have. This resource offers information into the life of an African American person, the barriers they face in life, as well as how it becomes more difficult with the more barriers they possess. Being able to read and understand the challenges through the eyes of someone that has experienced these challenges help raise awareness of the barriers one faces and how we can avoid these biases in the future. As a future educator, I hope to be able to use this information to help me to continue to be aware of the biases that people hold and how to raise awareness to future colleagues, helping to change these biases from forming and that could negatively affect our students. The impact of the triple jeopardy syndrome, also noted in this resource, as an African American male or female with a disability, can never be quite sure if race, gender, or disability is hurting their chances for advancement. The lived experience of disabilities varies both among people with disabilities and among racial and ethnic groups. Disability occurs on a continuum and at different ages. At ages 18 to 20, African Americans are slightly more likely to have a disability than non-Hispanic whites, at only 7%. However, individuals ages 61 to 65 grows up to over 50%. My third and final resource, titled Exploring Hispanic Parents' Beliefs and Attitudes About Deaf Education, is an academic journal by the Journal of Latinos in Education. This resource addresses race, disability, and the perception of disability in a Hispanic culture. In this journal article by the Journal of Latinos in Education, the authors Rodriguez and Allen wrote about the effects of disability on the Hispanic culture, as well as the difficulty the Hispanic culture faces with hearing impairments when trying to communicate. The article states that different cultures have different views on the best practices for their children when it comes to education, and this article highlights the Hispanic culture and how parents of deaf children discuss and determine their child's education. I never thought of this situation as being something one might face in education, but I like how they presented the information and research done on children. What I was most interested in was the views on disability in the Hispanic culture, and shocked that the article started out with presenting this information and how they perceived it within their culture. As a future educator, this information is important to learn, as well as useful to help other future educators to know that some families want to learn English to be able to communicate with their children, but some families don't want to learn English or American Sign Language, so there is no communication with their child. The idea of having to communicate with a person that is deaf is hard if you aren't familiar with American Sign Language, but being of Hispanic culture and being deaf and trying to communicate makes it even harder. The choices the Hispanic culture has to make on which language to learn and teach their child is difficult, as they don't want their child to lose their cultural language to be able to learn sign language to communicate. Parental beliefs about disability play an enormous role in shaping the decisions parents make about the education of their children with disabilities. These beliefs are tied to perceptions of disability that derive from cultural norms. If different cultures convey different notions about disability, then we might predict that the educational choices and opportunities offered to children from different cultures would differ, impacting educational outcomes. There was a study done in 2002 identifying 3 elements that summarized Hispanic cultural beliefs about disability: the meaning of disability in the family, the causes of disability, and the treatments for disability. Regarding the meaning of disability, it was reported that in Hispanic families, a child's disability belongs to the family and not just to the child. So as a result, families may become overprotective. In the causes of disability, from the views of a Hispanic parent, they believe that their child's disability was either a punishment or a gift from God. Language plays a major role in defining ethnic communities, and therefore language can be a bridge or a barrier among cultures. It can also be a source of cultural identity. Deafness is seen as a disease to be cured or fixed, and educational approaches focuses on oral methods and on technologies for restoring hearing. Deafness has been unfairly portrayed in education as an impairment that must be corrected through hearing aids or cochlear implants. This view defines deafness as a difference rather than a disability and leads to educational approaches that embrace individual and cultural differences and seek educational strategies, including the use of visual language in the classroom, acknowledging alternative pathways to educational attainment. Disability and race both have important impacts on well-being, and though the relationship between the two factors has not been well explored, indications are that the relationship between the two has a significant influence on people's lives. It is well known that both people of color and people with disabilities face barriers to education and employment. Race and disability intersect and lead to a situation where people of color with disabilities, especially African Americans, have poorer outcomes than people with disabilities who are white and people of color without disabilities. These are 2 additional resources here that I listed that enhance your teachings and understandings of disability inclusion and how we need to help build inclusive, resilient, sustainable communities. I wanted to add this quote: "There is no greater disability in society than the inability to see a person as more," written by Robert M. Hansel. Here is a link to my research and resource template. And thank you all for watching my presentation. I hope you learned something today.